All right, all rise for pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands. All right, thank you all for coming. Just as a note, from 6:30 to 7:25 today, we had an executive meeting to discuss personnel and potential litigation. Emergency services. I think we've got an update on. Yep, you got to come up to the mic so everyone can hear you. Yeah, and see you. And there's a. Yeah, and yeah, you just got to hit the button right here, and the mic will turn red. Yep, you're good.
There we go. All right. So, good evening, everybody. My name's Rick Armitage. I'm the chief of the Delaware Valley Fire Company in Irwina. Back the end of last year, the supervisors had asked us to come to one of their budget meetings to, discuss how they could help us out in any way. We've had some projects we're working on. One of them was actually having a certified rescue truck in the township for the residents. Both of our engines, we've always run rescue type tools. I say rescue, I mean auto rescue type equipment. We've always done some of that, but we've also always relied on mutual aid companies to be able to provide an actual rescue. We decided that, and we've been working on it for a while, to be able to build that truck into a full-fledged rescue truck, which thanks to the township now we've completed doing. So that's what's out there tonight. That is a 2010 engine that we had bought originally. We built it new. And rather than, in today's environment with cost and what everything, an engine like that now is upwards of $750,000 to build. So instead of purchasing another piece of equipment to do that job, we utilized the one that we had. So its firefighting capabilities remain the same. It has everything on it that it's always had on it as an engine, but now we've increased that load to provide rescue equipment as well to better serve the residents. Like I said, both engines have that type of capability on them, but we've taken this one and actually gone a step even further and certified that with the county. So now that we have an actual rescue truck. So that's what that is. It's been re-lettered, and it's re-equipped, so to speak, and added an additional amount of equipment on it. Some of the guys that I brought with me tonight were a big part of that. We have Lieutenant Jake Enow. Behind him is firefighter Kyle Kallenbach, and behind him is our chauffeur and EMT Mike Beverly, and our lettering guy Vinyl, and firefighter Andrew Volak. These guys all had a big part. I mean, every member of ours certainly had a part in it. These guys spent a lot of time, nights and weekends, working on it, mounting tools, and getting the proper equipment on there. It's about a 3-page list, Jake, right? As far as additional equipment that we needed to have to be able to certify that as a rescue. So tonight it's been in service, but it's now officially in service as a rescue to be able to better serve the residents. So that's pretty much all I have with that.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
So thank you all.
Chief, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys.
So continuing with emergency services, I have Cody Black here to be sworn in as a volunteer fire police. I guess you come up here. And we'll swear you in. Did you right hand raise for this? I guess raise your right hand and I guess repeat after me. I, Cody Black, do solemnly swear to support, obey, and defend the Constitution obey,
and defend the Constitution
of the United States
and
the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and to perform the duties
and to perform the duties
of a fire police officer
of a fire police officer
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations. I need to sign, and carry this.
trying to make sure.
All right, Terry, now you need your signature.
I'll sign it in a minute.
Okay. Do we need to give him a
Well,
copy?
actually, yes, but if you just put them both there, as soon as you finish signing in, so that I can put this down,
Oh, you got it.
then, yeah,
Okay.
then I'll sign. Don't go away with that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for volunteering. I think we're good. We don't have Tyler here tonight, do we? Yeah. Okay.
Then I can.
All right. Moving on, we're gonna adjust the agenda slightly to move up some of our conditional use applications so we could get those parties out of here. So we will start with our conditional use hearing for, which one's our first one here? For Hessel. So if you want to get set up.
Yeah. That's fine. All right, great. Thanks. I forgot how it works.
All right, Terry, you want to adjust that to see over here and then we'll, yep, and then we'll get Steve to officially start it. You're our cinematographer.
Telling you,
All right, we set up? All right. All right, Steve. Yours.
Okay, the first hearing that we have this evening is a conditional use application for Michael Hessel of 921 River Road. It's a conditional use application to expand an existing driveway that lies within the riparian buffer overlay district as permitted by sections 806C, 8, Romanet 2, small b, small d, and section 806, parentheses, small c, parentheses 9. The applicant this evening is represented by Bill Benner. So we'll first ask Bill to have your witnesses or witness sworn. Two witnesses, okay? Well, why don't they raise their right hand and we'll get them sworn.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your name for the record. Kristen Holmes.
Michael Hessel.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, members of the board. As obviously I'm William Benner. It's my pleasure to represent Mr. Hessel in this application. Just a very quick word about the application to set the stage. What this application is about is a conditional use to authorize a small expansion to an existing driveway to add a turnaround temporary parking spot within the riparian buffer. Now, this is a related application to an application that your zoning hearing board had considered in December of 2022, which culminated in the issuance of a formal adjudication or decision in January 2023. That decision authorized and granted a special exception to permit the removal of a garage and to authorize its replacement with an expanded structure, which would also be an accessory garage plus some accessory additional space. The effect of that decision granted Mr. Hessel the permission to build an accessory building that is about 300 square feet larger than its replacement. And the zoning hearing board at the same time also granted a variance. These were floodplain variances, not zoning hearing board variances, to permit the human occupancy of this building, but not for purposes of a dwelling, and to permit an accessory building within the floodplain whose size exceeded 200 square feet, and also to authorize a convenience bathroom in the structure. The board may remember that Mr. Hessel and I, along with his civil engineer, Kristen Holmes, who is beside me, appeared before you when you considered whether to take a position on the merits of the zoning hearing board application, and you elected to remain neutral. So what the township records will show is that after the zoning hearing board granted the relief, one of the conditions was the recording of a declaration of covenants, easements, and restrictions that would have the effect of forever abandoning the non-conforming dwelling unit in the former garage, and to make clear that the occupancy of the expanded building or new building would not be used as a dwelling unit, either on a long-term or a short-term basis. Mr. Hessel signed that declaration. It's now recorded in the land records. So this is phase 2 of the project. It's a much smaller aspect of the project. And you may recall that when you reviewed the zoning hearing board application, the means of ingress and egress was through an existing driveway, and those plans showed a small turnaround, which would allow vehicles to back out of the garage, make a K-turn, and then enter River Road going frontwards instead of backwards, and also to permit temporary parking for vendors such as Federal Express, Amazon, and the like. In the course of the review, we discovered that because this was an expansion to the driveway, the determination of your zoning department felt that this was building a component of the existing driveway within the riparian buffer. And that's what brings this application before the board. So this evening, you'll be hearing from 2 witnesses, Kristen Holmes, who's seated immediately to my left. Kristen is the project architect. She's testified before this board in the past. And you'll also be hearing brief testimony from Mr. Hessel. So I've pre-marked some exhibits and I'm happy to hand them out. And we'll be prepared to begin the formal record. But before doing so, it would, as a request of the board, I'd like to know whether there are any, if there's anyone here who wishes to become a party to these proceedings.
For everybody who's in the audience, if at the end of the presentation by the applicant, anybody who wishes to speak either for or against the application will be given the opportunity to do that. You can also request a what we call party status. Party status would allow you to cross-examine witnesses. It would allow you to present your own witnesses, and it would allow you to file an appeal if you were aggrieved by the decision of the Board of Supervisors. I don't see anybody raising their hands, so.
In that case, members of the board, inasmuch as there's no one here who wishes to either be an interested person or a party. I know you have a very heavy agenda, and if you give me the permission to do so, perhaps we can relax the rules of evidence, and I may be given the latitude to ask more leading questions than would otherwise be the case, and I think that could expedite the hearing.
Sounds like a great idea to me.
Okay, so before we begin, permit me to hand out some of the pre-marked, not some of, all of the pre-marked exhibits.
I have them already.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I.
Oh, thank you.
And if there is anybody in the audience who is interested in looking at the exhibits, there are a few extra copies.
Why don't we give a copy to our reporter? And for her.
I didn't need to, slightly. So with that, the first witness and the primary witness is Kristen Holmes. Kristen, you've been sworn. Just for the record, would you state your name and your business address?
Sure, Kristen Holmes, we're with Holmes Cunningham Engineering, address is 409 East Butler Ave, Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
And Kristen, the first exhibit in the exhibit package is your curriculum vitae. Would you confirm that that document sets forth your qualifications?
Yes, it does.
And you've been accepted as an expert witness to testify both in courts and before various zoning hearing boards.
Yes,
And would you confirm that you've been engaged by the applicant, Michael Hessel, to prepare the zoning drawings that Mr. Hessel presented to the zoning hearing board, as well as the zoning drawings that accompanied the filing of the conditional use application?
yes,
So, following the planning commission meeting, which raised some concerns about the project, did you revise these zoning drawings with a new set of plans?
yeah, so we just made a minor change to the plan to add dimensions to the turnaround space, because there were some questions as to the size of that space at the planning commission meeting. So that turnaround area has been labeled as 11 foot by 20 foot, that's shown in the front yard.
And I see that you have mounted on the board an enlarged version of Exhibit A2 and A2A. If you're more comfortable, if you'd like to testify from the board or right here, that's fine. So let me ask you, how does the plans marked A2 and A2A differ from the plans that you filed with the conditional use application?
So for Exhibit A2, which is the revised zoning plan, it is just the dimensional information that we provided on the plan. The layout and all of the zoning information and tables that are on here all remain the same. And then Exhibit A2 is a new plan that we put together just to try and help illustrate the driveway and the turning movements that exist on the property. So it's just a small, really kind of vehicular exhibit for the plans to show, in this case, it's showing movement and circulation from River Road onto the driveway. And that existing driveway it's a typical size, it's a 10-foot wide driveway along here, but we do have some constraints to the driveway as it relates to vegetation all along the northern side, which is the side towards the park property, as well as just the ability to make those safe turning maneuvers in and out from River Road. So this illustrates a standard car vehicle, passenger vehicle pulling in, and the ability or the fact that there isn't enough space to get two cars side by side in and out of the driveway. The width of that driveway just allows for one vehicle. And then that just shows the approach back to the new garage that will be under construction and a two-car garage with vehicles within that garage.
And do the plans exhibit A2 and A2A, do they show greater detail as to what the composition of this turnaround will be?
They do not. We are calling them out as a permeable surface for that turnaround space in the front. The exact type of surface will be determined by the landscape contractor for that, but it is intended to be a full permeable surface. So something similar to a permeable paver that would be installed just within that turnaround space in the front.
So why is this turnaround area located where it is as illustrated on the plan?
Yes, so having the turnaround space in the front between the house and the road is important because we do have, this property is sort of narrow and long. And I mentioned there are some constraints to the visibility and the width of that driveway. So by having a turnaround in the front allows for a car pulling in to be able to either pull off into this turnaround space if there's potentially another car coming out of the garage, or if there are cars blocking the area towards the back. Because it is a more longer, narrower driveway, it just allows that additional movement if there are, another car approaching, or even just a standard delivery vehicle, like your day-to-day Amazon, FedEx deliveries, without requiring them to pull all the way back into the property behind the house.
And what is the reason that you and Mr. Hessel located this turnaround area where it is, as opposed to behind the house or at some other location on the property?
So it's similar to the reasons I mentioned in the constraints of if there are cars in the garage that are pulling out, having to have a car pull in and all the way past the house towards the back could add some conflicts if there are multiple vehicles there. So allowing to have it in the front closest to the road, which would be the shortest distance for a car pulling into the driveway to be able to just turn around and get back out with having to go all the way back into the back of the driveway area.
Now, you alluded to the fact that the installation of this driveway would be of some semi-permeable material. What are the aesthetic advantages by designing or building the turnaround in that fashion?
Well, there's several different types these days of permeable surfaces, whether it's a mixture of different paver types or even grass pavers. There are several different types that can be used, and they do help to offset what we all know as impervious surfaces, which help to increase stormwater runoff and so forth. I will say this overall plan from the original zoning application through this conditional use is not proposed to add any impervious. So we're netting zero overall for what existed prior to any of the proposed improvements for this, including the front turnaround. So by adding that and making that a permeable space, it even further reduces the impact and actually helps to offset that impervious even more from what exists today out there. So it does help from stormwater management perspective. And some of the other things looking at here is that we're not changing the elevations for this turnaround space. They'll be set at existing grades, so there'll be no impact to the surrounding elevations or the impact to the floodplain or the riparian corridor itself.
And as insofar as this design will ultimately be reviewed by the township engineer in connection with the grading permit, When you presented your plans to the zoning hearing board and presented your plans for the necessary permits, did your design take into account the impervious surface associated with this turnaround for purposes of the design of the stormwater management facility?
Yes, so in this case, and as I mentioned, we are actually netting zero on the change in impervious. So there is no increase in impervious from what exists today for the overall project, including this turnaround space. So there is no stormwater management required because we are not increasing the impervious overall. So the application of these permeable pavers just help to even further reduce the runoff in the front yard.
Now, Kristen, because this is a conditional use application, the township ordinance has a series of conditions that an applicant for a conditional use needs to satisfy. So I'm going to take you through the 9 conditions and ask you to opine. Okay? So the first is that the application and the requested conditional use is consistent with the township comprehensive plan and open space plan, and consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. Would you explain how this plan meets that standard?
Sure, and with this portion of the application being the conditional use specific to the turnaround space in the front, within the zoning ordinance and within the sections being requested for the conditional use, there are certain allowances and certain prohibited uses within the different zones of the riparian buffer. In this case, the turnaround is proposed within zone 2 and zone 3 of that buffer, where a driveway or crossing or roadway is permitted when a conditional use is approved. So it would be in conformance with the zoning ordinance if the conditional use were granted for this particular turnaround.
Now, is there anything in the zoning ordinance that prohibits the creation of such turnaround area within the property's front yard?
No, not that I've seen.
I'm sorry, Mr. Benner, can you repeat your question?
Yes, the question was whether there is anything in the zoning ordinance that would prohibit or constrain the locating of a parking place within the front yard of the property, and the witness said no. Kristen, is there a section in the zoning code that prohibits the placement of a structure or a building which would be used for the housing of vehicles within the front yard?
There are, yes, there are restrictions on accessory buildings in front yards, which again, this would not be considered an accessory building per se on this. This is just accessory structure.
And in this instance, because the size of this parking area, staging area is 11 by, I think you said 20. That's smaller than that couldn't accommodate 3 cars, could it?
Correct. That would accommodate 1 car, and that's why we designed it to the dimensions that we did. Is that by looking at, we have software that actually runs turning movements, and by looking at that with the information that we have on the driveway, the ability to get a car to be able to turn fully into that and make that turnaround back out is what was needed for a safe maneuver here.
And because the number of parking spaces is fewer than 3, the township regulations would not require that it be fully paved. Is that correct?
Correct. And I would note too, just for sake of record, the corridor along River Road here, as I've driven it many times throughout my life, but even in close proximity to this property, you would see there are similar areas to different driveways. This property is much narrower than some of the others along River Road, but a lot of the other driveways in this corridor do have either a wider opening at the road or a wider area along the driveway to allow for some turning movements in the front yards.
Now, the second conditional use criteria is that that the application, if granted, is in the best interest of the municipality, the convenience of the community, and does not impact adversely on health, safety, and welfare. So could you comment on how this proposed conditional use meets that criteria?
Sure. I would say safety is the biggest proponent of this, allowing for the turnaround for cars coming in or exiting from the garage to be able to turn around without having to back out onto River Road, and being able to pull out forward is the main component to this. which is an improvement to the existing condition.
And the desire of the applicant to have semi-pervious pavers, do you feel that such a design is consistent with the criteria at issue?
Yes, and another benefit to help reduce and offset the runoff from stormwater.
Now, the third criterion is that the proposed improvement is suitable for the property and maintained to be in harmony and appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. So how does this application satisfy that standard?
Sure, I think one of the things that I just mentioned as it being similar to other driveways along this corridor, it would be in conformance with the neighborhood and other areas. And also by having it be a permeable surface and not just adding pavement out there to the area, it helps to sort of keep more of the naturalized feel of that frontage and that corridor along River Road.
And the fourth criteria is that the plan needs to be in compliance with all applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance and all other state and municipal ordinances. So is there anything about this plan that violates any applicable township ordinance, state or federal regulation?
No, other than the relief already granted and the relief seeking tonight.
And you reviewed the township engineer review of this application, which has been pre-marked as Exhibit A7. And is it correct that he did not call out any zoning or any other code violation?
Correct, yes.
Now, number 5, I believe you've already addressed that the effect on highway safety, access and arrangements. So I presume that you were concerned about making sure that vehicles wouldn't back out onto River Road.
Correct, and especially this being a PennDOT road as well, just trying to satisfy as much of their constraints or requirements as much as possible. Being able to eliminate that backing out, I think, is a big improvement to the property.
And you've given some testimony previously about compliance with parking standards in the ordinance. Is it fair to say that it's your opinion that the design for this proposed turnaround area is compatible with Tinicum subdivision and land development practices, as well as its subdivision and land development ordinance?
Yes.
And is there anything that you see about this application that would tend to create an adverse environmental impact on either this property or the immediate vicinity?
I do not believe so, no.
And the 8th and 9th criteria have to do with water development ordinance and suitability for on-site sewage. I would presume that there's nothing about this application that involves water development or on-site sewer disposal.
Correct, yes.
So, Kristen, that'll conclude my questions of you, unless you have anything else to add.
I don't believe so. I mean, just the summary of what I mentioned as to regards to why the location and the improved materials for it, I think will help be a benefit to the property.
Does the board have any questions?
I do not.
Ms. Thompson, Mr. Benner, you indicated that there's no ordinance in effect that prohibits a parking space in the front yard.
Correct.
Okay. It seems that our planning commission believes that there is such an ordinance. Are you, with your questioning about you can have an accessory building for parking? Cannot have an accessory building for parking in the front yard? That's the distinction that you believe exists in the
Yes.
ordinance? Okay.
I will represent to the board that I did a thorough search of your ordinances, and thank you for putting them at least semi-searchable. I look forward when you have the entire
Coming
code.
soon.
Yes, that would be sweet. But we did do a search, and there I found nothing. Now, if something exists, that speaks to my research skills, but I'm telling you that I did a thorough search. The only thing I discovered in the published materials were those which related to the building of a structure, and those which related to the requirements to pave parking areas if they exceed 3 feet.
3 spaces.
3 spaces, I'm sorry.
Anything else?
No, from this witness, no.
Call your next witness.
Thank you. Mr. Hessel? Mhm.
Hi.
Okay, Mr. Hessel, will you state your full name, please?
Michael Hessel,
And your current address?
921 River Road, Irwin, Pennsylvania.
And this is the subject property, correct?
Yes.
And who do you reside with at that property?
My wife Angela
Mhm.
and sometimes my two children.
So the Exhibit A3 shows that you acquired the property on September 11, 2020. Could you confirm that to be correct?
Yes.
And were you present when Kristen Holmes testified about this application?
Yes.
And is there anything about her testimony that you disagree?
No.
And Exhibit A4 is the adjudication that issued by the zoning hearing board. And that adjudication contains a series of findings of fact concerning the property. Would you confirm that that adjudication and its findings of fact accurately describe the property that's presently before the board?
Yes.
And one of the conditions of the zoning hearing board was that you will comply with the condition that you create a declaration of covenants, easements, and restrictions. And would you confirm that Exhibit A5 is the declaration that you recorded?
Show me. I'm sure it is, but 2, 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe this is it.
Okay. And the zoning hearing board had a condition that the wooden sheds on the property needed to be removed. Have they been?
They're gone.
And would you just simply reconfirm that you have no plans to reestablish an accessory dwelling within the new
No.
garage? And in fact, if you were to establish such a dwelling, that would violate the restrictive covenant, correct?
Sure.
And that covenant gives the township the right to enforce that covenant.
Yes.
Now, Kristen talked about the feasibility of locating this turnaround area between the new garage and your existing residence. Would you explain to the board why locating that area between the new garage and your residence, in your opinion, is not feasible?
It's right in front of the garage. We don't, as most people, always keep our car in the garage all the time. If the garage were large enough to fit our cars, which is why we're rebuilding it, we might put them in the evening, but sometimes during the day, you come in and out, you leave your car wherever, whatever. UPS driver shows up. He doesn't even know there's any space back there anyway. So there was one time when we actually saw the UPS truck do a nice donut on our front lawn. So we just want to have a place where someone can do that without making a mess of things. Someone comes, Bill comes, he has some papers for me to sign. He could just pull in, ring the doorbell, bang, bang. Thank you very much. We're not trying to put a garage in our front yard. Probably don't want to leave a car there most of the time anyway, because it's in the way of the view of the river. We just want it to be sort of convenient if someone's coming to visit, if someone's coming for a delivery. We want to be able to bring something in the front door.
Okay, and just to be clear off the record for a moment, there's not a chance ever that Bill would show up to deliver papers. That's why we have electronic signatures. But there may be other people who would come. Okay, back on the record. Now, Michael, you were present when Kristen went through the 9 criteria for the conditional use, and would you agree with everything she said?
Everything she said.
But to supplement it concerning the issue of inconformity with the existing and intended character of the vicinity, Exhibit A6 is a letter from Margaret McDevitt, the Chief Operating Officer of the neighboring county park. And would you confirm that Ms. McDevitt expressed no opposition to your project?
Yeah, I mean, this was back with the original zoning hearing.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, the park's been great, actually. I mean, I know that's a county thing, but.
So that will conclude Mr. Hessel's testimony. Michael, unless you have something else to add?
I mean, the only other thing I can add is if you are coming out of the driveway and you want to turn left to head north on River Road, you know, it is the park's property right there. It's a skinny property. The driveway's right by the property line. There's foliage there. There's a sign there that talks about the detour on Headquarters Road. Visibility isn't the greatest. So, you know, it's even more helpful to be able to not have to back out and safely see where you're going.
So I'd like to conclude the applicant's record by formally moving into evidence exhibits A1 through A7. And I'm very confident that the board has no desire to hear closing argument.
They are received. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a statement either for or against this application? Again, I see no one, so the question is whether, and if the board is of a mind to grant the conditional use, it would just require a motion to do that.
Mr. Benner, will your client submit a complete floodplain development permit application for the overall project?
That permit application has been submitted.
Okay.
For some inexplicable reason, it was stalled for a while. I understand from email communication today that it's now being reviewed by the township engineer, so that has been submitted.
Okay.
And in fact, that's one of the things that's holding up the commencement of construction, which is of grave concern to the contractor.
Mhm.
That was actually gonna be my question, but we don't have any further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use for the driveway turnaround.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
I have a question. The dimensions of 11 by 20, is that the smallest you can make it?
Yeah, I mean, Kristen was involved. We had a landscaper involved. You need to be able to pull in. Someone needs to be able to drive behind. If someone is pulled in, you need enough radius. You know, some people drive big pickup trucks or delivery vehicles. Bottom line of the thing is it's a permeable surface, so it really should have no impact on any of the water, stormwater, any of that. And you know, I mean, that's the size it needs to be useful.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If it's okay by you, I'll just stay here.
Okay. The next application is the
It's not printed on both sides.
application of Anthony Van Eck, if that's the way you pronounce it, Miller, at 213 River Road, which is an application for a conditional use to put a holding tank in both the front and rear yards of the Miller property. While Bill is getting prepared, again, anybody who wishes to participate as a party in this matter, which will allow you to present evidence, cross-examine witnesses, and appeal if there's a decision that adversely affects you. Is there anybody here who would like to be a party in the Miller application? Again, I see no one.
Thank you. permit me the opportunity to just hand out the pre-marked exhibits.
Again, I've got a copy.
Next slide, Jim.
You get a copy of it.
He emailed it to me.
Just professional things.
That's a second copy for you.
I don't know. I don't.
I have some more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put one.
You have one? I did. I got one.
Everybody has. So very briefly, as your solicitor mentioned, this is an application to authorize the installation of a holding tank. Your ordinance requires that any holding tank on a property requires prior conditional use approval. I note that that your planning commission reviewed this application on July 5, 2023, and unanimously recommended its approval. The primary witness this evening will be Rick Swantek, and his testimony, I promise, will be brief. Mr. Swantek, as you know, is a well-respected soil scientist, and his company was instrumental in the preparation of the various exhibits to which he will be giving testimony about, and all of the plans and materials and permit applications were all done under, excuse me, his supervision. So with that, I believe, Rick, you've been sworn?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or will you raise your right hand? You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record
Henry Rick Swantek,
and spell your last name.
SWIANTECKE.
Thank you.
Yes,
We can be informal. I could call you Rick. You won't take
Everyone-
offense.
everyone calls me Rick. Only bill collectors call me that.
We won't get into what other people call you. Rick, full name and business address.
I own and operate Enviro Technology and Design Incorporated. Been in business since 1987. We're located in Upper Black Eddy. Mailing address is PO Box 358, Revere 18953.
And Rick, just very briefly, what are your credentials as a soil scientist?
Well, from 1974 to 1987, I was employed by Bucks County Department of Health as a sewage enforcement officer. And I left, and I'm a certified Pennsylvania sewage enforcement officer number 00186.
And is it fair to say that you've been accepted as an expert witness both before this board as well as many other boards of supervisors, zoning hearing boards, and courts in this Commonwealth?
That's correct.
So moving to the issue, or moving to the case at issue, would you confirm that you were engaged by the applicant, Mr. Miller, to prepare or to make application for a holding tank permit?
Yes.
And why did you make that application for a holding tank permit?
When I first went to the property, it was with his realtor, Larry Brandt. And he showed me that there was a discharge of sewage onto River Road. And every time somebody flushed in the dwelling, it would probably run out. So I basically do soil testing and design septic systems based on the site features at this property. It's a severe slope, and the slope on the entire property exceeds maximum allowable limits for any type of on-site disposal system.
And based upon these site conditions, did you form an opinion that it was impossible to locate a traditional on-site sewage disposal system on this property?
That is correct.
And so when you did your design, I take it that you visited the property?
Yes.
And how was sewage being managed? I won't say treated. How is it being managed?
There was an old cesspool on the property, which was a hole in the ground that some of the plumbing went into. The laundry facilities there or just a hose that's discharging on the surface of the ground in that proximity.
And when you were doing your work in connection with procuring a permit from the Department of Health, did you find any records that this property ever had a permitted septic system?
There were no records at the county office.
Now, you talked about the topography of the property, and you described the property as being heavily sloped. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what efforts did you take to try to find a location that would be not within not invade or encroach upon either the front or side yard setback?
My only effort was a visual effort to find a spot that would be flat enough and would be within the building setback lines. And there's no place on that property, inside or out, that is accessible by machine, other than maybe a crane out on the highway or a helicopter trying to dig a hole there. I mean, it's just so steep.
And did you reach the conclusion that the location of the proposed holding tank as authorized by the Department of Health is the most suitable place for such a system?
I discussed that with the township, the health department representative, a lady by the name of Jeanette Anderson, and asked her to come out and take a look at it with me. And she declined my invitation. She says, I'll just stop in there with your plans and take a look at it. And based on my verbal discussions on the phone concerning this property, she agreed that this was the only place where I show the proposed holding tank that it could be installed. And physically, the only way they're going to be able to do that is the driveway goes up on such a steep slope that any equipment that's coming in to replace the tank, they're going to have to be up on that driveway with a piece of equipment to make the existing cesspool hole, pump it out, clean it out, pull that waste away, and then put the tank in that hole.
Now, in your description of the property, Rick, one of the exhibits, Exhibit A2, is a survey plan for the property. And do you believe that your testimony is consistent with the survey plan?
Yes,
And is it correct that the septic system design plan, which has been marked as Exhibit A4, was a plan that was drawn under your supervision?
yes,
And did that plan serve as the basis for the Department of Health to have issued the holding tank permit on May 5, 2023?
correct, yes.
And that's Exhibit A4. Now, as part of the permitting process, Rick, did the Department of Health require that the property owner enter into a pump and haul contract?
yes,
And would you confirm that Exhibit A7 is a copy of that contract? The answer is yes.
yeah.
And
Wanted to check if it's-
okay.
Is
Sure.
it A7 or A6? Maybe I'm in the wrong.
A6 is indicated on your list, Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
You said A7.
Did I?
Yes,
Oh, I'm
The,
sorry.
And the holding tank permit
Is
you said
A5.
is A4 and it's A5. So you're back on track. Keep going.
It's been a long day. I apologize. I thought scary. Okay, so A4 is the septic tank plan, A5 is the permit, A6 is the pump and haul contract. And Tinicum Township has an installation and maintenance agreement, which we've marked as Exhibit A7. And would you confirm that that's the contract that Mr. Miller executed and
Yes.
delivered to the township?
And just for the record, I have, Mr. Benner sent me the original signed and notarized agreement for recording together with two checks, one for $1,000 and one for $1,500 for the escrows that are required under the terms of the agreement. And if the board approves the conditional use application, then there'll be a request to approve and sign that agreement, and I'll get it recorded.
And finally, Mr. finally, Rick, are you familiar with the technical review issued by the township engineer, Steve Balla?
Yes.
And did he note any discrepancies with respect to the application, apart from the administrative details that you've given testimony about?
he did not.
And in your opinion, were you present when I walked through the conditional use criteria with the prior application?
No.
Okay. Is there anything about this application, in your opinion, that if granted, would be adverse to the health, safety, and welfare of the community?
No.
And do you believe that this application, if granted, is consistent with the neighborhood?
Yes.
And do you believe that this application, if granted, represents the minimum relief needed to provide adequate sewer to this property?
Yes.
And I think that's a fair summary of the conditional use. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude your testimony?
Well, the only time the county will consider a holding tank for repairs if we've exhausted all possibilities of doing an on-site system. And this permit application should be granted, in my opinion, because it's going to alleviate a public health nuisance and a safety nuisance of the ice that comes from the sewage leaking out during freezing weather.
That concludes Mr. Swantek's testimony, and that one last witness, which will be very brief. And that'll be Larry Brandt.
I don't think Mr. Brandt was sworn.
He was not.
Sir, will you raise your right hand, please? You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Larry Brandt. It's Larry with one R, L-A-R-Y, and the last name B-R-A-N.
Thank you.
Larry, what is your relationship to the applicant, Anthony Van Eck Miller?
I'm serving as his realtor for the sale of this property.
And is Mr. Miller present this evening?
Yes,
And he's sitting in the audience.
directly behind me, yes.
And are you authorized to speak on his behalf? Now, you heard Mr. Swantek's testimony. Would you give the board a little bit of background about how it came about that the applicant engaged Mr. Swantek to apply for and receive the holding tank permit from the Department of Health?
Sure, when we had the benefit of a contract for sale of the property, the purchasers did an inspection and identified through a septic inspection that it failed a hydraulic load test, and that's how we identified that effluent is coming out in Zip River.
So you've just told us that Mr. Miller plans to sell this property.
Correct.
And is that because he can no longer safely reside at that property?
Yes, he has since relocated to a assisted living facility.
And there is a buyer who has been identified.
Yes, and we've been under contract and able to keep it together through this process.
And is this the last remaining condition that needs to be satisfied?
That is correct.
So as part of your involvement with the property, did you become aware of a zoning hearing board decision concerning this property that issued in 2005?
Yes.
And that's Exhibit A9. And that decision made it clear that this property was to have only one bedroom, correct?
Correct.
And are you aware that through conversations that I've had with the Tinicum Township Administration, that the Tinicum Township Administration wanted written confirmation from the buyer that they were aware of the zoning hearing board decision?
Yes.
And could you confirm that Exhibit A10 is the change in terms addendum that the buyer signed that acknowledged understanding of the condition?
Yes, it is.
And that's Exhibit A10, and
Correct.
that carries the buyer's signature, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that concludes Mr. Brandt's testimony.
Does the board have any questions of Mr. Brandt?
No.
And I don't think I asked you whether you had any questions of Mr. Swantek.
I don't.
Good night.
Okay. If the board is of a mind to approve the conditional use application, it would be subject to the condition that the house would be limited to a single bedroom as set forth in Exhibit A10.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for taking care of this.
And secondly, I would request a motion to approve the installation and maintenance agreement and easement for a holding tank for the property, and authorize yourself to sign it and me to record it.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Quick minute, do that.
So I think that concludes my, my presence this evening, and I see that there's a sign which says this is reserved for me, and I want to thank whoever put that sign up. Very, very thoughtful. But so there's no confusion. Can I take the sign down if anybody else wants to come up and fear that they're taking a reserve?
I'll tell you what, you can take it home with you as a souvenir.
That's a great idea, but I'm pass. So thank you for your consideration this evening. Much appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. All right, we're gonna go back to the top of the agenda. On to old business, headquarters road bridge update. So from last meeting, the most update we got from engineers and people being on vacations is we are expecting a proposal from Doug Bond for investigation and determining the load-bearing capacity of the existing abutment foundations at the bridge. This proposal may or may not need the drilling that was required that I talked about at the last meeting. We will know when we get that proposal back to see if he has enough information from the existing data to be able to determine our load-bearing capacity without having to do any further investigation. If we do have to do investigation, we'll get a proposal together and get a driller out there to do some samples if necessary. Hopefully we'll have a chance of having some information about that specific topic at the next meeting, but it'll depend on how fast things move and if we have to actually do those cores or not.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions related to that? No? Okay. On to next item, the Rolling Hills Farm Amendment. This was an amendment to the 1996 stipulated settlement agreement, stormwater maintenance, monitoring, and comprehensive unilateral declaration of restrictions and covenants. And I guess I will recommend that we table that at this point and wait for a further meeting when we have Rich available to discuss that.
Right, and it's a proposed amendment. It's not an actual amendment.
Yeah, correct. So we will
And that's
table,
fine.
we will table that to a future meeting. Item 3, Planning Commission codification.
Yeah, and that's such a busy thing.
Thank you, Mike.
I have a very large copy of the hard work that was done by the Planning Commission. I spoke to Steve, spoke to John Clement, who did most of the heavy lifting, but all the Planning Commission did a lot of heavy lifting with it. So I don't want to just say thank you to John. But I spoke to Steve. We had sent this down to Bucks County Planning Commission, and it came back a couple times. But we just missed something. We added in. Steve, I think we agreed that we did not have to send it back to Bucks County.
That's correct.
So from here, are we ready to advertise then? Do we just
Yes.
advertise? So all I need to get that rolling forward is your approval, authorization to advertise for Steve and I.
I will make that motion gladly.
And I'll second it.
Thank
All in
you.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. Thank you for getting that together.
Thank you, guys.
That has been ongoing since I've started. So congratulations. Item 4, ordinance 260. This is an entertainment ordinance that we are proposing, and this is permission to advertise, correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
need authorization for
Yeah,
that.
it came back, it was reviewed by the Bucks County Planning, it was prepared by the Township Planning Commission was reviewed by Bucks County. They had two basically typos that need to be corrected. So it was approved by the county, and yes, it is appropriate to advertise it. Both of these would be advertised for the second meeting in September.
We'll make a motion to advertise ordinance 260.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for that as well, Planning Commission.
Yes, thank you.
Township Building Edition. You have plans?
Oh, so no, we don't have plans, but going back, if you recall, we had a proposal for an addition. I asked for your authorization to sign up for it. Reread it along with some of my fellow supervisors, Eleanor included, and it, there was some fine print that it was going to cost more than I brought before you. In the meantime, I reached out to 2 other architects to give us plans. One did not get back to me, even though I tried twice. And then I have one in here. It's a lot less money. The only issue with this one is it doesn't include the mechanical, so that's the air and the heat. But it's so much less money. Not that I did want a complete package to make it easier. But this would be for an addition for the staff. Get some of this out of here, and something we've long desperately needed here, which is an ADA bathroom. So, it's in here. It's like 26 or 2,900. I'm sorry, I apologize. I have too many papers today.
2640.
Thank you. And then I would take those plans and call 3 people to quote us on, what is it, the air handling capacity load, which I'm sure you have wording better than I do. So anyway, I would like your thoughts, and if you agree, approval to sign the contract with, here's the plan architect for an addition that would basically go over the police conference room and enlargement of that front bathroom to become the public and ADA bathroom.
Uh,
So,
I'm okay. I'll make that motion
Okay.
to get that going.
I'll second.
thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And on to our last old business item, the Spinio planning modules. We have, the planning commission has signed them, and we are making a motion to authorize Terry to sign them and get them out. So I'll make the motion to authorize Terry to sign the Spinio planning modules.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, some announcements. First Responder Day was held at Delaware Valley Fire Company on August 5th. I didn't get to make it to it.
I was supposed to too, but unexpected company.
It was
John was
fabulous.
there, Eleanor was there, and John.
How did, what, good event?
It was great.
That's good.
Do you still have bruises on your arm, John?
All right, good to hear that was a good event.
So,
Yeah, go ahead, you guys.
well, we just want to thank the police department and the folks at Del Val for coordinating this and planning it. It was a great success. And I understand it is the first of many years to come of this. Yes, so for folks who didn't make it out on August 5th, please kind of put it on your calendar for next August because it was really worthwhile.
So there's also some great photos on the police Facebook page of some of the goings on, which include Officer Barrington being taken down by the canine demonstrator dog. And Officer Baxter really getting it in the dunk tank. And so as our events are coming around that we're just starting this year, anybody that wants to get involved and help join the volunteer family, don't have to join a committee and sign up forever, or just come out and have fun with us.
Yeah.
Just build community by having fun.
Okay.
All right, excellent. All right, moving on, there will be an ag security district application of my property. It will be in front of the planning commission during their August 22nd meeting. And then there will be a hearing held on September 5th during the Board of Supervisors meeting. Moving on to Parks and Rec, there is a bring your own game night at the Tinicum Park. That will be held on Thursday night, August 17th I guess multiple nights, August 17th, 24th, and the 31st from 6 PM to 7:30. And I guess, do we have anyone that wants to go over some details?
We do. Terry?
This is a great thing.
Terry Johnston, Creamery Road. The Parks and Recreation Committee has diligently worked this year to develop plans, ideas for gathering the community together as often as possible and utilize the parks that we have at our disposal. So one of these events is the Bring Your Own Game Night. We will have popcorn, water, iced tea, beverages. The miniature golf will be open and available for use. Kids 10 and under will be able to bring their bikes and ride them around the loop trail at the community park. And the impetus behind this is to get everybody together, bring a board game or card game or whatever. I think back to when I was a kid and you'd sit around with your family and play euchre and whatever else. This is that type of thing, to just get everybody together and spend time together with your neighbors and community members. So hopefully everybody can show up and bring a game and
Yeah.
have fun. Gambling is not permitted. Strictly enforced. No gambling.
So we have flyers. The Park and Rec Committee put this beautiful little flyer together. We have a couple here to take with you, or you can take a picture of it and text it to your friends and family in the township.
And if you forget any of this, we do have everything listed on the website as well.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Terry,
And again, that's the 17th, 24th, and the 31st.
excuse me, board, but Terry's, while Terry's here, do you want to solicit us some volunteers for trunk or treat?
Sure. So the second annual, first time's a charm, second time, big deal. The second annual trunk or treat will be Saturday, October 28th. And then the rain date is Sunday, the 29th. Same idea as last year. We'll do costume contests, contest for the best trunk display to hand out the candy. It was an awesome time last year, had a great response. The community was very involved, which was awesome. And I think that this year we're gonna raise the bar just a little bit further. So anybody that is interested in volunteering, reach out to Terry, the township office, and they'll put you in touch with the Parks and Recreation folks. We need help with parking and helping to organize the tables and setting people up with their areas for the trunks to set up. So any help would be greatly appreciated, and we hope to have everybody there months ahead, but
And
start
don't
planning
forget
now.
the volunteers must wear
Yes,
costumes.
everyone
Everyone
wears
has to be in
costume.
the spirit.
Yes.
It's a good time. It's a very good time. Right, Cindy?
Yeah.
Sorry for distracting the agenda there.
That's all right. It's good to hear that we're continuing to do so. So on to new business, advertising hearing for a sewage management ordinance amendment. The amendment seeks to clarify the reserved sewage area that is not required when a failed system is replaced with a new standard on-lot system. And so we need a motion to advertise, correct?
No, you're.
No,
we already have
the motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt in this case. Okay. I'll make a motion to adopt it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Speed and traffic study. This is something that we brought up, I believe, last meeting and maybe a couple meetings for on Hollow Horn Road, which we have previously done studies on in 2002, 2011 and 2017. I know that Nicole is on vacation
That's correct.
this week, so we don't have those reports in front of us. Assuming 2017 might be the most relatable to today's traffic issues. I don't know if you have anything else. I mean, I think maybe we should table that, take a look at the reports from the past at the next meeting. I know that we had some other residents, put forward some emails that came up, saying that they would like to see something done. I live on that road. I do see issues, even when I'm pulling out of my driveway, and I have a pretty good sight distance both ways where I could look one way, look the other way. By the time I look and pull out, someone's already on back of me because they probably going like 65 and caught up and came around the corner pretty quick. So I think that there's something that we could probably do there between the corner, Irvin, all the way down to the bottom of the hill there where the bridge is, or where the bridge and the stop sign. Yeah. If we wanted to make a limited capacity, because I think the reality of the problem elsewhere on Hollowhorn probably is not, it's more naturally defeating of speed, whereas that front section, especially at downhill and uphill, and where the corner is, we hear constant stories of issues. Thankfully, we haven't had any real accidents in recent history, other than some self-inflicted incidents. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's something that we could probably look into. I'm interested to see what the 2017 study had to say.
Well, I mean, I think since I've been on the board, there have been 3 accidents on the road. And I haven't finished my second year yet. And I think the last 2 accidents involved cars that flipped over. So I don't see any harm at all in getting the speed study underway for Hollowhorn. You mentioned that we received emails from 3 different households, and I think maybe 5 residents total through 3 emails. Let us know what life is like on Hollowhorn Road and how the volume of traffic is far greater than it ever has been. I mean, they have talked about a lot of high-speed vehicles, slopes, many driveways, particularly busy traffic in the morning and late afternoons. Sharp corners, no sight lines. People have, one resident let us know that she can't count the number of times that she's nearly been pushed off the road by people going so fast around a bend. And she has repeatedly had cars end up in her front lawn from speeding around a bend. So
Yeah, I guess
I don't see a reason why we should wait. I think we should.
I guess
get on this.
one of the other items related to this, because that curve is a big issue. Is Steve, what's being that this is our road? There's no restrictions on additional signage with regards to curve ahead or
Well,
yellow
you
arrows.
can put up the signs that are approved by PennDOT.
Okay, so because it's our road, we can sort of
Yes.
do as we please.
Yes.
With that being said, would we want to try to include Urban Road in this study as a group? Because there is that section of road is 40, I believe, currently posted. Yeah, Dark Hollow is 35 up to there, and then it turns into 40, and we have 2 S bends that are probably 10-mile-an-hour curves in the middle of Urban, and it's still a 40-mile-an-hour road, which is sort of odd. And if we do get some of the additional housing that has been on the horizon for 12 years, that will definitely be more of an issue for that area.
Sure. I think doing the speed study, including Urban Road, also makes sense since they'll be out there. They might as well.
Okay.
So do you want the speed study first? Nicole has to come back, but would you like me to direct her to do the speed study for all of Hollowhorn or the section that you were talking about? I just want to be clear. You can do it in sections if you choose.
So I think that part of the issue is that people are heading along the straighter stretches of Hollowhorn, and then they come upon these sharp curves. So I think if we limit the speed study to the sharp curves, we're not really catching the true speed of people as they travel. I think we need to look at the whole road.
The whole road all the way to Church.
Well, I guess what I was
Different areas. So what I'm asking you is if you want it sort of done in like that area, say Hollowhorn to Red Hill, as Jim was talking about, and Urban, that area, and then another section. Or you want all
with a
Hollowhorn to
different
River.
set of speeds.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
in like thirds.
Yes.
mean,
Mhm.
Different areas.
Yeah.
I think Hollowhorn, Irvin to Red Hill is sort of
Mhm.
the upper section where we probably see the most amount of issue, because that's
Yeah.
mostly straight. You've got a big uphill, big downhill, both of which increases speed because people want to get up the hill and go downhill.
Right.
So I think that would be a good first place to start.
Arlington Arts Center Road. I just wanted to make you aware that I think you probably know this, but there's probably about 4 access roads from 611. Be Dark Hollow, Geigel Hill, Headquarters, and Hollowhorn. Dark Hollow's 35, Geigel's 35. Headquarters is actually 25 to the bridge, and then it's 35 from there to the river. So
No one would know what headquarters is.
well, right, nobody's used it in a
No,
long
yeah,
time, right?
It's been there.
But I
It's
had
been there
driven
for
by
years.
there, and I actually got a ticket there when it went down to 25. So I do remember that, and it was about 12 or 13 years ago. But yeah, so I think, I guess what I'm looking for is some consistency, because I would think Hollowhorn, they're all pretty much equal.
They're all equivalent roads. They're all
They-
sort of
they
one,
are.
they start going down the hill to the creek
Exactly.
and
And
then.
then I
come
think
back
that
up.
that bend, I think the last 2 accidents happened almost at the exact same spot. But I think there's some consistency there, and I know PennDOT can just sort of establish a speed limit without a study. Is that the case? Steve?
No.
They,
Township is gonna have to do a study out there.
No, but how did PennDOT make Dark Hollow and the other access roads all 35 and 25?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been that way for
Yeah.
And then submit them to PennDOT.
I can't imagine how that would be any different. I
yeah,
mean,
similar to how we just did 32, same thing. You know, we have to locally do the speed study and then.
Yeah, I mean, because right now it's 55, and it's also 55 on the other side of 611 when you come into the township,
Yeah.
113. So it's 55 all the way through.
Yeah.
Right past here, down until you get to the river.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'd like to see a little lower speed limit, because at least that way you can enforce it too if you need to. And hopefully some people will abide and just do 35 or 40, which I think is reasonable.
Thanks.
All right, so I guess I'll make a motion for us to do a speed study on Irvin Road and Hollowhorn Road down to Red Hill.
Even though I said what I said about the thirds, but I'm not the chief. If you, maybe the motion should be, am I allowed to say this?
Sure.
More open in that, so that,
Somebody has
Chief
discretion.
Nicole has discretion on what's the best way for her to accomplish.
Fair enough.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I know I suggested it, but I'm over here thinking.
No, that's, you know how it's gonna actually happen. So then just Hollowhorn, where Nicole, or where Chief,
Holophorn and Urban.
you know, where Chief, deems necessary, and Irvin where Chief deems necessary.
Thanks.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On to Tinicum newsletter, ad hoc communication committee discussion direction. I guess what we would like to see as the board would like the ad hoc communication committee to get together, talk about direction going forward. We do have the potential for there, you'd have to let me know exactly what it is called, but there's a potential option to use if we didn't want to go through the full-blown we do everything model. There is a lighter model that would sort of take care of the formatting, and we'd be more responsible for the content. But I think the board would like the committee to get together, figure out what they can do, see which direction they'd like to go with, and then come back with some ideas for round 2.
Sounds great.
Item 4, police department, the body cameras, which we spoke about last meeting. I believe Chief had given us a proposal for
Yes,
getting
it-
body cameras for all the officers, and we have that in
Yeah.
here.
Yes. And, I don't know if you would want to table the expenditure or not with Mr. Rosamelia not present. Yeah, it's up to you. I know that
It's a
she
5-year
presented it to everyone.
commitment.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Of $2,697
Right.
per year for 5 years.
So if you did table it, and I'm not pushing you that way, but we do go back to 2 meetings a month, so we
Mhm.
have a meeting on the 5th.
That makes sense.
I would agree. Let's table it till, Rich is able to attend the meeting and we'll put it on the next, meeting and hopefully you
Yeah,
can
put
attend.
it on the next agenda.
Groundwater Committee, annual report, we should be getting it September 5th meeting. We should be, are they
Yes.
coming to the meeting?
Yes, Riley. It is on. Riley Murphy will be coming to the meeting. I don't think, that Carrie can make it, but she's happy for Riley to give the report. You know, our groundwater committee, is kind of quiet. They're not here at all our meetings, but they do so much work
So
for us.
Mhm.
And so it's really everybody that's interested in it, in their groundwater and their clean water and where things are, should really plan to attend that meeting.
Yeah,
I
it'd
think
be,
it's
it'd
going
be
to
good
be
information.
a nice report.
When we did have that dry spell in the beginning of June, was it? I know that we did reach out to them just to, because they're doing constantly monitoring and have the historical data of, groundwater elevations. And even though it was dry on the surface, our water table elevations were still pretty stable. And the same thing with last year when we had our pretty hot spell. I think we
Yeah,
also
so
reached out to
everybody
them.
thinks about our groundwater committee when they're worried about their water.
Well, they do have pretty good historical data from various spots in the township. So even, we do have probably better than most for a township that doesn't
Yes.
have a public infrastructure for water supply. We do have information on what our public resource, which is everyone's private well, but all pulling from mostly the same water source, where that is at any given point. Because we do have the groundwater committee who collects
Yes.
data constantly.
And they're amazing.
So it'd be good to hear a report from that. Moving on to Land Preservation Committee, we got a committee appointment. I believe we have Anita Nolan, I believe, who put in an application to be part of the committee. I'll make a motion to appoint Anita to the Land Preservation Committee.
I'll second.
All in favor? No
Aye.
discussion?
You look surprised, Anita. Oh, okay.
Well, thank you for volunteering. I
Yes.
know you've been, very active with a bunch of different things, and thank you for the land committee, because we always need help with that. There's a lot of groundwork to be covered. All right, on to regular business. For our meeting, minutes of July 11th, I'll make a motion to approve as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The treasurer's report and budget recap, the May recap and treasurer's report.
Up on the board and in all your packets.
Thank you. I'll make a motion on the payroll reports, for the periods ending, July 14th in the amount of $34,227.12 and July 28th in the amount of $35,773.52.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Disbursements?
I
Take a
reviewed
moment
them
to
and
take-
Any questions?
I have no questions,
Yeah,
having
then-
reviewed them.
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On to, we don't have anything for Public Works from Doug. That's just-
Nothing, well, I should say, it's not on the agenda because it's not done. But, I've been speaking to Doug, we're doing our dirt and gravel road project on Tank Cannon. And that's going really well. The county was out to have a look and they're really pleased with the work as, well, we know our guys are really amazing. But, things are going well with that project. And we look forward to, I think it's gonna be a few more weeks, but we look forward to major improvements as far as runoff, and all the problems our residents have had there.
Excellent. All right, on to zoning. We went through items 1 and 2 earlier on in the meeting. Zoning hearing board application, Thomas Berger. So in this case, we have to make a decision to either send or not send our solicitor or an opinion to the zoning hearing board, which the hearing is tomorrow. This was on Center Road.
No, the hearing is on the 24th.
Oh, excuse me.
That's right.
Tonight is tonight we're making the decision. The meeting will be on the 21st for the zoning hearing board. This was the application requested relief from multiple zoning ordinances regarding, steep slope, conservation overlay district, slope disturbance in a steep and very steep slopes to build a driveway, single-family detached dwelling, septic system, pool, and accessory uses. So I read through the PC comments on this, and both of our the zoning and the engineering review. I mean, I guess in this case, regardless of what they do because of the subdivision, because of that property, it's either one thing or the other. So I don't necessarily know how we want to approach this with how we position ourselves, because if we're asking them not to do one thing, we're asking them to do something else, which is also just asking for a zoning variance. It's basically, do we want them to cut slopes or do we want them to cut trees? Is sort of the options with the way that that property is positioned. And I sort of saw that with the PC's comments. It was sort of corrective, like basically gives their potential for movement of the property, repositioning of the driveway, and the house be put in a different location, so on and so forth. So this is sort of a tough one because they presented the application that they presented, and are we okay with that, or do we want to push them to do something different? But they'll be back here anyways for that difference regardless. I did note that in the engineering review, I think from Wynn, that they did make a comment about potentially trying to straighten out the driveway. That might be something we want to put a position on, or maybe we just put a position regarding the engineering review as a whole, and have Steve make sure that those get to the zoning hearing board and that they're looked at and understood and addressed in their discussions. Steve, I guess I don't know if you necessarily have an opinion on that or not, or maybe it'd make more sense for you and or Steve to attend, because it's more of a technical.
I think if you're going to oppose the application, you ought to authorize Steve and myself to attend, just for the reason you said. I mean, it's a technical set of issues.
Yeah.
That,
I don't necessarily know if it's an opposed position. I think it might be just more of an informational, because there is again, if we oppose this, we're asking them to do something different, but in that case, they're going to be back here and we'll be back in the same case with just a different scenario. A different set of rules and regulations and overlays that they have to, get relief from some way, shape, or form.
well, I would have, no problem with attending, and putting Steve on as a witness to run through the issues that he feels are required to be addressed.
Yeah, I guess this one's a little bit odd because I don't really necessarily feel that we should be opposing it, as in we don't want it to happen fully, because that just means something else has to be knocked down, or that we want to make sure that the issues that are fully understood by the zoning hearing board, which I don't know. Your ideas of.
So Steve, on this one, when I think about it, the project that they're proposing, it's the fifth requirement to grant a variance, that the relief requested is the minimal relief required. Is that right?
That's correct.
So in this instance, the project is a 3,000 square foot house and a pool house. And to me, that doesn't seem like the minimal thing they could be doing up there.
The issue isn't, and of course, that's Watson all over again. The variances are not to locate the house. The variances are disturbing the steep slope. And whether you have a 3,000 square foot house with a swimming pool and whatever, or you have a 1,500 square foot house without any swimming pool or accessory, whatever, you've still got the same driveway. It's the driveway, it's the hardship. The question is, what is the minimum relief necessary to put in the driveway? My understanding is that on the top of the hill, it's level, you can do those things. There's no variance being requested up there because the house is 3,000 feet, or because there's a swimming pool, because there's anything else. So I don't think, I don't think is it the minimum relief necessary is related to the size of the house or the accessory structure? Related to the driveway. So that's the way I understand it.
Yes. Harry Johnston, Creamery Road. I'm a member of the Planning Commission, and just to shed a little additional light on one of the points that we struggled with on this application was to Steve's point, and Eleanor kind of touched on it, is this design, regardless of how long the driveway is or where the house is put, is it the minimum disturbance that you can make on this property and still build a dwelling? And from a developer standpoint, I don't see how you could justify this driveway, the length of the driveway, and the disturbance that you're making at the top of the hill for the development of the building envelope for a pool, a house, pool house, regardless. Again, Steve said it doesn't matter whether it's a 3,000 square foot house or a 1,500 square foot house. That's less relevant. What's more relevant is the amount of disturbance in whole, right?
Well,
And
I guess the in whole for the, Steve, I guess would be correct in the case for the minimum relief required in this instance, it will be for the disturbance related to the access, the driveway, not necessarily including, wherever the building envelope falls in the property that you could build, without impeding any zoning ordinances. That's not necessary. So I just want to just be clear, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the disturbance, the minimum disturbance needed to gain access to where the building lot can be.
At least it appears from Steve Ballard's review that he's actually suggesting that there needs to be more disturbance to the steep slope because he's concerned about the emergency vehicles making the second 90+ degree turn.
So board and Steve and planning commission. I know that we focused, and the biggest problem on this application is the driveway and the steep slopes. But, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, you looked closer at this application than I do. But I believe they were going to build the pool or some accessory dwellings within the buffer of the steep slopes as well. It's not just the access that they're asking for.
Right.
I think
Well,
maybe that clarification should help.
Well,
maybe.
that, if there's variances other than the steep slope that would address the size, then I agree. I mean, if you don't need, although I'm sure there are people in this world that disagree with me, you don't need a swimming pool to have a house. But in that sense, it wouldn't be the minimum that is necessary. But, whether it's a 3,000 square foot house or a 1,500 square foot house, it's not
right,
relevant.
not relevant. But again, I believe that, it could be proven that you could develop a house into the side of the hill with a much shorter driveway and much less disturbance to the steep slope in whole.
That may be or may not be.
And that was,
no
that
idea.
was part of what
Steve-
the planning commission struggled with was, is this plan, did they fully explore all options? And is this the minimum disturbance? Basically, that's what we struggled with when we were processing that.
Was Steve
application.
present? Steve
Yeah,
B?
yes.
And did he comment on that? I mean, it strikes me to put a house in the excavation that would be required. We put a house on the side of that slope.
Yeah, we talked about, potentially moving the building envelope and the house further back, away from the steep slope. shrinking that turnaround area in front of the garage, making that smaller to try to compress the building envelope to make it smaller. They showed trees that were to remain, that were in close.
Doesn't make the building envelopes. It may, the building envelope is where is the.
Limit of
gross
disturbance,
area
limit
that
of
you can
disturbance.
disturb.
Yes,
Okay, limit
yes,
of
yes.
disturbance. Yeah.
Shrink your limit of disturbance, get it away from the steep slope. And,
Well, if that reduces the disturbance of the steep slope, I agree with you.
Right.
If it's just because somebody thinks it's aesthetically more pleasing to push it back, I don't see where that's an issue of the minimum. And so I don't know, and maybe I don't know which one of, I don't know. Are you suggesting that if you do what you just said, move it back, whatever, it reduces the disturbance to the steep slope?
it would, because what they showed is on the drawing, or what was represented was that the pool, the edge of the pool and the pool house were encroaching on the steep slope.
On the steep slope buffer.
Yes, correct, correct, yes. So that would, if you shrunk the limit of disturbance and moved it back further away from the steep slope, then you would get yourself away from the buffer.
If you want, if
If the applicant was
if
so
the
inclined.
applicant well, no, if the other thing the applicant could do is just say, okay, like, you're not giving me a variance for the pool and the pool house, but I'd still build my house.
Right.
I mean, that would reduce, I agree with you, that variance is not the minimum.
Right.
Variance necessary, but it doesn't bear on the issue that Jim was raising, which is is the driveway the minimum part, or do we trade the driveway for disturbance of trees?
Yeah, well, I guess that was sort of, and that might play a part in depending on where the house located. I mean, basically reading through this, the way that they're describing it is that, potentially moving the house off the steep slopes then encroaches it onto our woodland areas, which maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. That'll have to be hashed out, but that would be the, can we push, or, in that case, from the whole design perspective, a pool and a pool house, maybe that, that's not a relief that should be granted. Like, you could build a house in between those two buffers, but you can't get other things, and you don't need the pool, you need the house. Right. So I think Steve's letter is somewhat specific, but also somewhat vague, because I think it's related to, if they did this, this might be required. If they change this, this might be required. So I would be inclined to send the Steves to the meeting.
Steve Square.
To argue the point of, we're okay as long as the minimum is done, and that we're not encroaching more than is necessary to build the driveway for the building lot. If
And
there's
the issue of you need a variance to put it in the buffer, in the pool and the steep slope buffer.
Yeah, I mean, Steve does, also reference in here that once you get into this with regards to sewer management and storm runoff and whatnot, there'll probably be more requirements, and there might be more disturbance, which with the house will definitely be required. So there's probably more than meets the eye off the bat, even if it's the house.
Do we, is Steve Balla available on the 24th?
I'm not sure. I will find out.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well
Hold
then,
on.
all right. Want to make a motion, or you want to continue? Well, the question is whether it's a discussion on the motion.
Oh. No, I think.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Catherine Auerbach Center Road. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at the memorandum I sent, because I don't have email. So I dropped it off today to be distributed. Number one, in the discussion of the subdivision, there was emphatically stated that they were not planning development, even though at the same breath, they were saying that they wanted to develop one of the parcels. This, of course, has come in first, the 10-acre parcel of the two pieces that were split. But it was clearly stated that these were non-conforming properties. And this 10-acre parcel is non-conforming, not suitable necessarily for putting a residential use. The person is either buying, has some financial interest in this property or whatever, but that's been a clear statement. We have our ordinances. There's no hardship. Township doesn't owe him anything.
Well, ultimately, this is not the township's decision. It's the zoning hearing board's decision.
I mean,
And we granted the subdivision, so we've made a position that we've made two lots. We can't tell
We
someone
can't assume them to be developable.
if they're a lot. Steve, you could explain that a little bit better.
The question, we went through this before.
Yeah.
The subdivision. I'm sorry, the subdivision, did not violate either the zoning ordinance or the subdivision ordinance, and therefore the township was required to approve it. Now, the discussion that's occurred here tonight is whether or not the request for their relief to build on the lot is the minimum relief necessary to make the lot usable. And at least it seems that there's some valid questions as to whether that is or is not the minimum relief available. But when the subdivision was granted, it was granted because the two lots conform to the two lots conform to the zoning and subdivision requirements to divide it into two lots. Now the question is whether or not the applicant can meet the 5 requirements for a variance to be able to build on the lot. So, and as has been discussed here tonight, there seems to be some question as to whether that's true.
With the current plan.
With the current plan, yeah.
And I think Kathy's comments go to the prong of, among the 5 that the applicant needs to prove in front of the zoning hearing board, that the applicant did not create a hardship. And my understanding is that here, with regard to the driveway and access, the hardship is the slope.
That's right.
And the applicant obviously didn't make the slope. Is
That's
that,
right.
is that
Yeah.
the analysis the
And-
zoning
and-
hearing board will
And there's
follow?
and there's a second aspect of it. I mean, this really is unusual because the two lots were in effect created by the fact that the road runs right through them. I mean, it's pretty hard to say you don't have one lot on one side of the road and one lot on the other side of the road. But the
I
issue,
do.
well, I understand that. But yes, the issue as you described it is the applicant didn't create the steep slopes. So it's a minimum.
But
Is
the
this the
app-
minimum? Is
yeah.
this the minimum variance necessary? is
But the
issue.
township has standing ordinances about steep slopes.
Yes, and we have.
The applicant is aware of that and is trying to change that.
They're asking for a variance, which is why the. zoning
That
hearing
is,
board-
there's no hardship. The person knows that we have regulations about our steep slopes.
So what do we do with that point?
mean, you can make
This
that-
particular applicant was aware of all the zoning ordinances we have in effect that restrict what whoever the owner is might be able to do with that property. And that person chose to I
Buy
guess
or
buy
have
the
interest
property.
And that person has the right to apply for a variance. Whether the zoning hearing board grants it or not is going to be up to the zoning hearing board to determine whether the person has demonstrated that he or she, complies with the 5 requirements that are necessary for a variance.
Yeah, and in this case, the variance process might allow something there, or, basically by law has to allow something there. Is that something that someone's willing to actually build, or is it something below what they were looking to do might be the case? And that's where the zoning hearing board will come into play, where, they have to provide or, produce and show that they are doing the minimum needed to be able to use that property for a single family home. And that the plan currently might not fall within that requirements. That might be a 1,500 square foot house with a whatever driveway. That might be the requirement that needs to be met to be minimum. That's what the zoning hearing board is there for, but we can't sit here and flatly say, no, you can't do anything, because, any variance anyone's requesting for anything, that we have these processes in place for that. We can't say no to everything, or, there'd be nothing here.
You can stand by your township ordinances.
And
And
that
Township
is
ordinance
where the zoning.
permits a variance.
Yes,
The township ordinance permits a variance
just,
if you meet the 5 requirements of the municipality's planning code. That's in compliance with the ordinance.
again,
Do you think, would it help if I explain something like procedure wise and not legal terms? And correct me if I'm wrong, but we stand by our ordinances, which is why the zoning officer denied the permit application. But everybody has the right to appeal the zoning officer's decision. And so if somebody wants to fight a variance, that's why neighbors get notified and they can go to the zoning hearing board and become a party. And because once it goes past here, the board is in control of the zoning officer. Zoning officer follows our ordinance. He says no. Once this jumps to the zoning hearing board, they have a chance to do what they're doing and make comments, but we do not have the right to deny anybody, even if the zoning officer were to send out a notice that you're doing something illegal by the ordinance. Everybody has the right to appeal to the zoning hearing board in, I don't know, in the Commonwealth at least, but I'm sure in other states have the
Yeah.
same thing.
it's the variance process.
So the argument maybe would be with the zoning hearing board, because the board already said no via the zoning officer.
We have to allow the process to follow through, and anyone
I don't know
has.
if that helped or made it
Yeah,
worse.
basically, we have all of our zoning laws, and this is per Pennsylvania. And if anyone wants to try to get permission to go against those rules, they have to go for a variance or a conditional use, or one of the various ways that you could ask for leniency for those rules. And that is, in this case, that's what this applicant is doing. And we have the ability to present an opinion, because we are just as much, our opinion is weighted just as much as a neighbor would be in this case, because it's the zoning hearing board who makes the decision. And, so we're talking about potentially going there and saying we have some issues with the current plan the way it is, and we want to make sure that whatever gets granted, or, whatever plan is presented is the minimal that you would need to be able to utilize that, for your use. And, if you
Okay.
have a tiny building lot, you can't build a 5,000 square foot footprint house if that's not the minimum that you could do there.
Right, right. But in the course of your language tonight, you were like, well, we're okay with that, and they're going to do one thing or another, or, oh, maybe they'll come back. No, stand stronger with your opinion that we have steep slope ordinances. They're there for a reason.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Last month, people died because of flash floods in Bucks County. In 55, 99 people died because of tremendous work. If you don't manage your steep slopes, you are encouraging more and more runoff and degradation of our streams and things like that. We have those laws for a reason. And the reason is not just maybe site specific, but it can be what happens afterwards with that water. It's impossible to control all the runoff on that water, on that property and things. That's very difficult, but you can certainly state that you have a strong opinion, if you do, which I hope you do, about that the steep slope ordinances and various setbacks are there for a reason, and those reasons are for everyone's health and safety. If they're designing a driveway, the driveway should not ever be on Center Road. They have road frontage on Headquarters Road. The entrance onto that property is much more level on Headquarters Road. You could even place the house down there closer to, just like the neighboring property, Mr. Runkle, his house is right there. That configuration is very similar. That would be closer to minimum. The steep slopes along Center Road are tremendous. There's trees coming down. You'd be cutting 30 some feet into the hillside. And there's no turning radius. It's an 11-foot road. And also it then impacts two streams, the small stream going down. It impacts the culvert under Headquarters Road, as well as the main stem of the Sundale or Little Tinicum Creek. So there are many ways that you can totally recommend that this design go in a way different direction that can be much less of an impact on the environment and not be quite so wishy-washy or, well, we're sort of okay with it. This is like one of the, it goes against every grain of what the township has been working on to try and protect all these years. And I just printed just to show you the steepness is enhanced by these beautiful flowers that were blooming earlier this year. But if you see going down Center Road, it goes straight up. The flowers help to illustrate the slope right there. That would be where they're cutting in with a big driveway. Not necessary, you could place it somewhere else. If you have to have a house there, it can be down lower. That's not the only use for that property. So your minimum is a pull off.
Use that we have, that they have to, that is the minimum use that is being decided against. So it's a single home residence. That's the use that is the zoning hearing board is weighing the five.
Well, I'm just saying that you're making a recommendation, you're either upholding the planning commission and the zoning hearing board, you're strengthening and reinforcing evidence for the zoning hearing board to consider. If you're weak and you're just, well, it could be anywhere and well, it'll come before us again. That's not good language to present.
Well, I've written notes on those points that have been raised to discuss with Steve. Is a driveway on Headquarters Road less intrusive than a driveway on Center Road? Can a house?
Steve,
Can
that
a
would
house be-
require a variance because our ordinance says if you have frontage on two roads, you have to put your driveway on the lower classified.
I got it.
road.
But
I get it.
so what? But that's
No. You
I
see,
know,
you
I'm
can't.
just pointing out
That's
that we
the,
need another
but
variance.
you're
for
saying that
That's why
process is
Steve-
okay for the position that you want to take, but not the position that they want to take. Yeah, so you understand that this is they presented a plan, so the
No, I think
plan
what
that we.
Kathy said was, if you have the driveway enter from Headquarters, it's less disturbance of the steep slope. So if what we're concerned about is the steep slope, she is offering an alternative that is less intrusive. So I don't think that and it may require.
they
a
still have to
variance,
come back and
but
get a
on the
variance,
balance,
but
we
it's
may
right.
prefer a variance on that point than jeopardizing this.
Exactly.
Steve, the issue of what's the minimum use of a property? I mean, a wooded lot could be used for forestry. Is that a use?
That argument has been rejected by the court. To say you've got to keep it as open space, so you can cut trees on it, that's been rejected. The exact same argument was made in Solbury, and the court said no. If person's entitled to a variance to build a single family dwelling, you can't require the owner to keep it as open space in perpetuity. Question is, what's the minimum variance that, or the minimum disturbance that will achieve that? And so I thought the question, and I understand what Terry's saying, the ordinance requires driveways to come off the road of the less intrusive road, but and as Eleanor has said, maybe it's a balance. Maybe if you're disturbing a significantly less amount of steep slope, and that it makes a much more manageable, stormwater management situation, that then, represents the minimum disturbance that would allow a single family dwelling to be built there. I mean, I think these are issues that I need to discuss with Steve B. In order to, see whether or not he, it's one thing for us to sort of sit here and speculate on those things, but
Yeah.
I think we really need some engineering, look at those kinds of issues.
So just sort of a procedural question, say we make that suggestion, we send you to the zoning hearing board, and something that we suggest to do, the applicant is okay with, but it in itself requires another
Well, what that would-
variance
what-
relief.
What would have to happen is that the applicant would have to go, ask for continuance, go back and redraw the plan, and then come back at a continued hearing and say, okay, I've made changes A, B, and C. That's reduced the disturbance. And then it's simply a question of, is that the minimum?
Yeah, just, what happens if we suggest something and then that something is a variance in itself, how does that?
Yeah,
all work?
and the applicant may say, no, I'm not willing to do that, and the zoning hearing board may deny it or whatever.
Yeah, so I guess our position is to have you talk with Steve and see driveway, limit disturbance of the steep slope, and then also the building envelope. Is there a position on the property where it does not impede in steep slope or forestry? Or is there basically a box that avoids all of our overlays that would require a variance? And that's where we would be, that's where we would request anything to be built to be put in that box. Basically.
Would the board like to add the language for their motion of representing that you want the minimum?
Well, that's
inherent.
Well, it's just part of what needs to be done.
And then we'll double check that Steve is available, hopefully.
I'll get it.
So I'll make the motion. All of what we had told Steve to discuss with Steve Balla and then present that at the zoning hearing board to try to get the most minimum that is required to build a single family dwelling.
I'll second.
Any more discussion?
Well, just to bring us in my letter also to make you more aware that the reason why those slopes are there is that's a formation of pretty hard rock, and the stronger stem of the creek, the little Tinicum Creek along headquarters, makes that area lower and much more accessible than along Center Road. Center Road's pretty much cut through against this hard rock, and any disturbance of that is then going to have impacts on neighboring properties with vibration and impacting the rock and water issues as well. So that it's not just the slopes per se, but construction into that rock would be very damaging for the whole area. There's also the spring, which is not on that property, but on the 29 acres, but that would be impacted by whatever is coming down the smaller stem of that creek. So to avoid impact on the spring would be important. It is within the Irwina Historic District. There is actually a ruins on the property near the corner. So then the disturbance should be actually more to the east, away from the exact corner. But that would allow much better sight distance and everything else for any access onto the property.
Kathy, it's a ruins of a building?
A building, I'm not sure if it's a house or a shop. It was identified in the Irwina Historic District as a contributing component of the district, resource to the district.
Is there an Irwina? Is there an official Irwina district?
What's that? It's eligible. It was deemed eligible for the National Register. There's an official application, and the state ruled as eligibility. Part of the actual listing required majority of the residents to be in favor, and at that time there was a very strong campaign by a certain person who wanted to develop within that area to have people say no. So it didn't actually get placed on the register, but it's deemed eligible. So it has the same status for environmental review and things like that. And so this is a contributing component. It's closer to the intersection. So it needs to be noted on the plans.
I
And-
don't, if it's not an official, because I know what Ridge Valley is, and then, in Eulerstown is both.
Those are our official.
Yeah.
It's official, except that it's
Except
not
that you can't enforce
actually
anything on it.
listed.
If it's understood that
Well,
it
you
was a
don't treat
proposal,
an
it-
eligible district like it's trash, okay? You want to try and enhance it and keep it because there
but
might
you
be.
can't enforce laws that are
Eh.
related to historic districts on non-historic district areas. I get the intent and. I get the-
Actually, the section 106, you can. The federal laws are enforced on eligible districts.
Well, this is not a 106.
Well, I'm just telling you, but don't say you can't enforce laws, you can.
But are you saying that this, because it's eligible, it receives the same protections?
Yes.
Okay.
The only
Through
thing that it doesn't
what?
get is if someone wants to get tax credits for doing major rehabilitation. It doesn't flow back to the individuals for tax relief, but it has all the environmental protections, yes. All the legal protections, National Register.
Are you saying this application disturbs it? Or?
Oh,
you-
gosh,
oh,
this is,
just
this
a moment,
destroy,
just a
this is
moment.
a.
I'm talking about physically.
Physically, I mean, the application that is presently under consideration is a significant alteration of the landscape and yes, it disturbs.
The ruins.
Yeah, does it physically,
I'm not sure how close it comes to that. But the ruin should be noted on the plans.
I'm making myself another note.
So that these are resources that we would like to cherish and protect. That's the job of the township, to protect our resources. So we want to make a note of that. Don't ignore it. And things. Those are primarily the components under that 10 acres. I still think there are outstanding issues with regard to the subdivision, the placement of the monuments. Have not been done properly.
They were supposed to be corrected.
Yeah.
They haven't been.
The plan was getting corrected, I don't know, quickly, visibly on. For those reasons, like, $2 plan, so I think before it should be. So, they're correcting on the plan, I don't know if they didn't go out yet. It's basically.
Did we request them to move them on?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So it
As
just,
a matter of fact, the plan, as Terry just said, the plan won't be recorded until the plan is amended and the monuments have been installed in accordance with the plan.
to me, it seems odd that anything could be considered for part of that subdivision if the subdivision hasn't been finished out and completed.
Well, they've got
Based
the
on-
right, you are correct in that if they got a variance, let's just say for the moment that they received a variance, they would not be allowed to start anything out there until the subdivision was recorded and the property was sold to the new buyer. Property can't be sold to the new buyer until the subdivision plan is recorded. And until the subdivision plan is recorded, the Department of Health is not gonna issue them a septic permit. So without a septic permit, they're not gonna get a building permit. So you're right, that must be corrected. And they have been told to correct it. Matter of fact, that was one of the conditions of the approval of the plan.
All right, good. I think
Yeah, I know. I'm trying.
the rest of it is in, in the letter, if there's anything that you see that's additional components on this, but pretty much we touched upon most of the points, but I just feel that all the issues, all the features out there were not properly represented on the plan, that they need to be done. And it would be nice if these were handled and done corrected before you start taking a look at a new plan, because you're making decisions without necessarily all the information that is needed to be present before you make decisions. So I hope that, thank you for considering a very minimum on that property and to encourage placement of the access off of Headquarters Road.
Motion still at stand.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
What happens if Steve Ballot is not available next Thursday?
Well, first thing I'll do is ask that, whether, I guess this is Benner again, would agree to continue it until he is available. And if he said, no, I'm not willing to do that, I know that there are other very competent engineers at Wynn Associate. So we'd have Tim Fulmer or one of those guys come.
Moving on, the rest of these are notices. So we have a zoning hearing board application, ZHB 2023-02 of Giordano. This is an applicant seeks relief from multiple zoning ordinances for a nano brewery and tasting room. Currently, the planning commission review, this would be a second review, is going to be on 9/26. The Board of Supervisors review of to send the solicitor to the zoning hearing board or not would be on 10/17. And then currently the zoning hearing board has been continued to 11/9/23. Then we have zoning hearing board application ZHB 2023-4, Parrott and Schmidt. And the applicant seeks relief from zoning ordinance to allow construction of a driveway to cross the wetlands. Oh, this is something for us tonight. The Board of Supervisors to make a decision to send to the Planning Commission. I'll make that motion.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. The Planning Commission will review this on 8/22. We will, it'll be back to us on 9/5 for decision to send the solicitor or not. And the zoning hearing board meeting will be on 9/28. And then the final zoning hearing board is application ZHB 2023-5, Callaway. I don't know what this one is for because we don't have the notes on there. We must have just got this one.
Yeah, we did. We just got it.
Okay, so this will be, so our decision to send to the planning commission will be at the next meeting. The planning commission review would then potentially be on 9/26. It'll be back to the board for decision to send solicitor on 10/3, and their zoning hearing board is currently scheduled for 10/26.
So board, I have one that didn't make it on there because we just got it, and it is incomplete. And we sent a letter to the applicant advising them that it's incomplete. We also, sent a letter to the applicant saying that we're not even sure that it could possibly be approved. It's so incomplete. But our zoning hearing board solicitor advised us not to reject it in hand. So I will not have time if that applicant doesn't want to correct the plan and they don't want to give us an extension, then I will not have time to bring it to the board, and I would like to send it directly to the planning commission. Steve, do I have to amend an agenda because this is an if? Or can I ask the board if I'm just sending all the zoning hearing
You're
boards?
just sending it. I thought the
We've
board,
made
I
that.
thought the board had made a motion.
We've had that, yeah, that-
That one's, no,
Send everything.
this is a new one. Okay.
No,
so-
I
oh,
thought, I thought,
Yeah.
I thought.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. All right, then I'm
Standing
free to do
standard
that. Thank you very
codes.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess, just as a note, if we do not get any information, it's still considered incomplete when sent to the planning commission, just please let them know that. And so they could make a recommendation to us,
Yes, and if we don't get an extension, we won't have time for a full zoning and engineer review, but we will send the planning commission the correspondence that we had with the applicant for that review.
if it's incomplete, like we've had discussions over applications, we have to accept them, but we don't have to approve them or send our position to approve them. So,
Thank you.
all right, public comment.
Cindy Gasperry. Talking about this zoning hearing you're gonna have for that property that wants to disturb a steep slope. My parking's on River Road and I climb up 35 steps to get to my house. So why do they need a driveway to go to their house? Just saying.
Yeah. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Meeting adjourned.